What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Indie Inkwell. My name is JJ. I'm one of your I am one of your two hosts. My co-host Michael is not with us today. He is once again being kept away with his Air Force duties, but we let him slide on that because it's kind of an important job. So, without further ado, let me bring in our guest, Jon Westhoff or Westhoff.
Westhoff. Either is fine. I've been called worse.
All right then. Indie comic book writer, letterer, publisher. You wear many hats, man. The first thing we like to do with everybody is kind of get their origin story, kind of how you got into comic books. Maybe if it was like as a kid, or a lot of people didn't really get into them until they were like later teenagers or early adults. So, what was your origin story with it all?
Well, I was very fortunate at about 11 years old. My grandmother worked at a cleaning company, and her office just happened to be close to a comic shop. And she herself, she read comics when she was little. She came over on the boat to Ellis Island from Italy, and she read, Betty and Veronica and Betty Boop, stuff like that back in the
Okay.
day. So she knew what comics were, and she's like, well, there's a comic shop. I'll bring my grandsons in there. She bought me and my brother. I believe with 99% certainty that Amazing Spider-Man 332, where Venom's jumping straight at the cover, the Eric Larson cover, I think was the first or second comic I picked up, and I was hooked from there on out. She and my mother, thankfully, would take us back every couple of weeks or months. My brother and I just really got sucked into the collecting. Collected up to, mid high school, and then, relationships and things started happening.
You get distracted with other things at that
For
age.
sure. And my brother stopped reading. He was like my only, friend that read comics. And so I kind of got out of it for a little while, got back in after high school, and have been kind of reading ever since. Civil War and Ultimate Spider-Man really got me back in to collecting. So
I
I
would
think
say
it's
I hear
good.
Ultimate Spider-Man did it for a lot of people. I mean, I know it did for me. It helped me like really actually get into comics because at that point I was around like 11 when that started.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. So for me, it was like I was a Spider-Man fan. He was primarily what I read, mostly Marvel, for those teenage years. And then got back into because of Spider-Man, and then as I in my early 20s started to branch out more and read independent comic books, and I've been reading ever since.
Were there any like particular characters that really had your attention for like long periods of time, like apart from like the obvious like Spider-Man or Batman? Was there anybody like that really stuck out for you and kind of made you think, I wonder if I could start doing this?
Well, I was never as a kid really thought that way. I mean, I did draw and made up stories and stuff like that, but there was really my older brother. He's about 13 months older than me. He would get the white page, hardback books, and he would make his own characters. He was obsessed with Rob Liefeld and Jim Lee, and he would draw his own, and I would read his stories or play Legos with him and act out the stories. And I did, that
You were
wasn't
like
really
his
my
only
thing.
fan back then at the
Right.
time.
And I never really had a desire to write. I know a lot of people are like, oh, when I was 12 or 13, I was writing my own fan fiction. I was just happy to be on the sidelines. It wasn't really until my mid 20s when I was kind of getting to the sunset time of being in a band. I had been in a band since I was about 14, 15 years old. I was getting a little older, having kids, and all that. I lived in a townhouse, so it wasn't really, great to be blasting the neighbors out every day.
Right.
So I was kind of coming to the end of that road. And I was looking for another creative outlet. I just happened to be on a comic forum back in the olden days, long ago. Us old people used to go to the internet for forums where we would talk to people who had interests like us. So there was an amazing one around the podcast 11 O'Clock Comics, and that was where I met a bunch of my lifelong friends to this day. And I just happened to post, hey, I'm thinking about creating comics. Is anybody interested in working with me? Much to his chagrin, my now 15-year partner in books, Bob Ornelas, he responded and said, yeah, throw out some ideas, and we've been working together ever since. So it really kind of started as an outlet for my creative influences in music. I didn't really have an outlet anymore, and then I kind of fell back into comics. As far as like a character, I hate to do the weird video, but you can probably see this back here. Yeah, I'm a little obsessed with Sam Keith and the Max.
I guess, yeah, I see it. Not a bad obsession though.
No, he's definitely my heaviest influence. You know, his writing is, I love his art, obviously, but the Max had a huge influence on me, and just writing. That was really the point in my comic reading where I'm like, oh, comics can be whatever you want. They can be the most bizarre, don't even have to make sense half the time.
They
Chaos,
really don't.
make it up as you go. You can do whatever you want in this medium because it's not TV, it's not film, right? We don't have these huge budgets and have to get millions. We can do whatever we want on the page. And that really kind of lit a fire in me like, oh yeah, that's really what we should be doing with comics, right?
Well, because that's what music lets you do. Because I know I did hip hop music for the 10 years before I started creating content. And it was the same thing. Like I stopped doing it and then I needed something to get rid of that creative energy building up, like
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. And then they are very similar. And we may talk about later part of why, I do put a lot of music into my comics, even if it's just, music I'm listening to and inspires me,
right.
I am heavily influenced by music. And you're right. Nothing better than embracing the medium again and doing something only you and your collaborators can do. That's a really cool thing. The only real close thing to that is probably writing novels, right? You can do whatever you want in novels.
Yeah, for
A lot
sure.
of other creative mediums, you're bound to something, right? You only have 90 minutes to get people interested and have a full story. Comics can be whatever. Music can be whatever.
Oh yeah, I mean, you could tell a whole story with a one-shot comic book, or you can tell a whole story with something like Saga that's going into the 60, 70 issues, like, or you can do like Walking Dead and they're in like issue 400 and something.
Absolutely. And there's so many amazing, just world-class books that come out every month in comics. It really is the best storytelling medium. But even still, I don't think people embrace that enough, right? Like you can have a character die on the first page, or you can, like you said, go 100 issues of the same character, or you can um, end the issue on page 12 and then start another issue. You can do all kinds of silly
You could
things.
bring the character back to life if they
Right,
die.
in
I mean,
one
you can
page.
do anything you want, really.
Yeah, and then I really enjoy that part of it.
Well, and I think it's a great medium because for people like me with ADHD, I will sit down and read a novel, but it'll take me 2 months to read that novel.
Yeah, I'm the
I could
same
sit
way.
down and read a graphic novel in an afternoon.
And I think that's really what kept me into. I have some. I don't think it was any particular disability or anything, but I do have trouble retaining what I read, so I end up going back and rereading. So it takes me
Right.
a long time to finish. But comics was like, oh wow, that visual medium just helps it sink in so much more, and I think that's why that's been the bulk of my reading.
So as far as indie creators go, is there anybody that like directly influenced your writing style besides obviously who you've already spoken about with the Max?
Well, I would say, Sam Keith is a big one. Jeff Lemire, I would say, is another one. He writes very emotional stories, very character-driven stories. Yes, he's very good at kind of making these surreal worlds or things in the background, but his stories are really a lot about what's going on with these one, two, or four characters emotionally. So I think that he is a huge influence. I'm also a huge fan of like Rick Remender and just how kind of over the top he is with certain stuff. But he also, his comics will be really silly, and then that almost sets you up for the gut punch that is, the emotional moments that he'll add to things like Fear Agent, or his Frankencastle run was very emotional. So those are the two that really pop into my head.
Oh, okay. So why did you decide to do everything self-published and actually publish your own books as opposed to trying to pitch them to some of the bigger indie labels? Because publishing is its own monster in and of itself.
You ain't kidding.
And then you add lettering and writing and everything else on top of that. That's a lot of hats to wear.
Yeah, I initially started publishing because, again, that forum that I mentioned where I met some great comic creators, they had mentioned that there were so many of us on the forum who were making comics and had never really seen our work in print. I was new to it, so I was like, oh, you just put out a comic and you put out a web comic and people like it, and then you make a collected edition and people buy it. I was kind of naive, and I was like, they were like, well, we've tried to get these like an anthology of all of our works, and it just never gets off the ground. And I said, well, I'm stupid enough and naive enough, I'll do it. And so that was really how I got into publishing. The person I was working with, again, Bob Gar, he published comics under his name at the time. His self-publishing label was King Bone Press. So he was like, well, let's just team up together and we can put, our stuff out under that and make this anthology and see where it goes. The next thing you know, we did 3 volumes of that anthology and 3 volumes of Banthology, which was a music anthology. And we did a dozen other independent comics. 10 years later, we had like 25 comics under our belt. So really it was just, we tried along the way. I kind of said, okay, maybe somebody will want to publish Bulletproof Chicken, or Apocalypse Man was our first story he and I did together, and I pitched it to a few places, and how it goes. If you don't really have like a fire under your name, it's hard to.
You get a lot of no's, a few maybes, and
yes.
maybe that one yes once in a while. But
now that I'm under my own label, Part-Time Comics, now I'm just too stubborn, right? I'm like, I do still pitch. I do still hope that one day I'll be able to check that off and say, hey, I was a published author. But now it's just like, well,
I mean, you kind of are a published author, though. Exactly. You're self-published, so that's published. Published is in the name.
And of course, that is still it is still a goal. But at the same time, if I sit and wait around or spend what little time and energy that we have to create comics on that, then I'll accomplish nothing. So I'm kind of just continuing to just do my thing. And it's like if somebody notices and wants to pick something up, then we'll talk about it if it works for both of us.
Right, because then at that point you've got a nice little backlog of IPs that you can draw from and be like, look, I've got my own little bit of leverage here. Like,
yeah, and then if somebody actually does approach you, they say, oh, he's got a lot of experience, and in comics, that's what you need. You can't just walk up to someone with your first book and say, believe in me. They can't take that kind of risk, or they don't want to take that kind of risk. You gotta come to them like you said, and I can say, here's the 20 books I put out in the last 15 years. Is this a good enough history for you? You kind of see what I'm about if you read through these. And if not, I'm happy to continue to put my own stuff out.
I was gonna say, because your website is loaded. When I looked at the website, I'm like, oh wow, there's so much here. Like it's actually pretty awesome.
Yeah,
there's not a lot of self-published authors or publishing houses that do that much and have been around for that long. A lot of them kind of fizzle out.
Yeah, you're right. I've seen a lot of creators come and go in the 15 years I've been doing it. Sometimes when I think about it, I don't want to think about it because then I feel that I'm old and reaching the grave too soon. But
hey, I've got the grays coming in as well, my friend. It's actually my 34th birthday today. So
oh geez, well you got to flip that for me. I just turned 43, so and that was part of starting Part-Time Comics. Was Bob and I, we had different goals for what we wanted for the company. We published a lot of our friends and peers' books, and we really put a lot into it, and it just didn't get to where we wanted it to be. So we kind of reached a point where we were a little bit burnt out and just saying, hey, let's step away. But then about 2 years later, I kind of got the itch again and said, I've got these stories, that big 4-0 numbers coming up. If I don't do it now, when am I going to do it, right? So let's just do it and see what happens in the next 5 to 10 years. If I get down the road 10 years from now and it hasn't gone where I want it to be, then at least I gave it my best shot while I could,
I would say, I mean, I feel like there's no age limit on comics, especially when last year at GalaxyCon, when I was hosting some panels for them, Steve Englehart's still running around, Mike DiCarlo's still running around doing stuff. So
absolutely. And it wasn't just like, hey, it was like, if I'm really going to give it a solid effort, I got to do it.
While you still got the energy to really put the work in. Yeah,
exactly. Like if I want to at least, and then, I'll have a foundation of books, and then, whatever happens in my 50s and 60s, I'll know that, again, I gave it my best shot, and I still have these books to look back on and say, I feel like I did something.
For sure. So before we get into the actual book that we came onto the show today to discuss, tell me how you linked up with the creative team on this particular project.
So for Drumsticks of Doom, that was an idea that kind of the seeds were in my head for, I don't know, 7 years or so before I approached Dan Doherty, the co-creator on the book. And to be honest with you, it was kind of just a seed, and I was waiting till I kind of had a bigger idea to approach him with. And then again, when I started Part-Time Comics, I was like, again, Dan and I met through the Banthology anthology that we did at King Bro Press. He and I have both been in bands.
I was going to say that 5 times fast.
Right. we both have the music background. He plays guitar and sings. Even to this day, he's still a working musician. He gigs out a few times a month.
Oh, nice.
So, and he's also an amazing comic book creator. So he and I met through friends. A mutual friend of ours recommended him for the book. He's an amazing illustrator. That is first and foremost. He can do anything in comics he wants. And then again, having that music background, I was like, he's really the right person for this book. I need someone who has a background in not just that he can understand how to draw a guitar, but he understands how to play and what it's like at a gig and
what
it
it actually
like
looks like to play a guitar. Like,
yeah, and like record music and all the frustrations that go into being a working musician and all that. And then he happens to be like an insanely nice guy, and we've been friends for the last decade or so too. So it finally just came time again. You gotta you go through with it, or don't. So I approached him, of course, at the best time in the world, during a pandemic, and said, "Hey,
when nobody
you got
was
some time
doing
on your hands.
nothing.
You want to make a book together?" And he's like, "Yeah, of course." So we started working on it. So I'm very fortunate that Dan is also a friend, an amazing musician, and an amazing illustrator, and had the time to work with a sad sack like myself. And then so we brought in some other amazing, cover artists. Also, Ryan Vela does some art on some key Elseworld kind of scenes. I met him through, social media. So we brought in other people to kind of play in the universe as well. And a lot of them are, peers and contacts that Dan and I have made through these years, but some of them are not. Some of them you just, comics is a small community. It's amazing. You can just email someone and say, "Hey, I have this cool book about heavy metal. Would you like to draw some heavy metal?" And they go, "Hell yeah."
I mean, I think a lot of artists, when you say, "Do you want to draw some heavy metal?" they're going to say, "Yeah."
And I'll tell you, another acquaintance of ours, Kelly Williams, amazing artist. I approached him and I was like, "Well, I want you to do an homage cover." And I said, "I want it to be Dio, Dio's famous Holy Diver cover." And he's like, "You know what? I was about to tell you no to a homage cover, but then you said Dio," and I'm like, "I'm in." And I was like, "That's all you gotta say. You gotta know, if you know your fellow metalheads, a way to get them interested."
Right, 100%. So you went about it like, I want album homage cover, not comic book homage cover.
Right.
That's awesome, dude. So give us a synopsis of Drumsticks of Doom. Kind of give us an idea of what people are in for with this series if they've never heard of it or seen it before.
So Drumsticks of Doom is the short pitches. What if Black Sabbath, not the Beatles, became the most popular band in the world, and thus the universe was changed forever, musically and otherwise? But our main character there in the middle, Lana, she just wants to make independent music in a heavy metal world. She's having her best jam session yet with her partner Jimmy when they are thrust into a battle to keep heavy metal on the top of the charts after she finds a magic pair of drumsticks.
We're going to speed through some of this artwork here. We'll bring it back up throughout the conversation.
And you see Dan's just amazing. Obviously, that kind of sells it itself. I hope that the pitch and the story lives up to the art, but at the very least, you're going to get jaw-dropping art from Dan and Ryan in this book. That's for sure. We just published our first trade paperback. It's a little bit of glare from my window here, but
it's still awesome. I think I actually have that cover here. There we go.
That's the first. The trade paperback is the first 4 issues, the first miniseries we did over the last 2 years, and now we're into the second arc of the story. We're doing a Hellboy, BPRD, Harrow County type of miniseries instead of an ongoing series. To give people a chance to jump in at any point, because you know how these independent books go. They don't always. It sometimes takes a little bit more time in between. So I thought rather than do an issue 5, we'd start a new mini series and see if we can get some people to jump in here.
No, that's a good idea for sure, especially if if one part of the team doesn't have time to do a certain thing right then. Put out some side story, keep people interested, but make it a nice little entry point.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to get. Some of my favorite comics do it like that anyway. So I'm I thought I'd give it a shot with this series. It's really kind of designed to be 3 arcs. So there definitely is more story to tell, but of course you also know how it goes. We got to get through this one first and see how that goes. So I hope people will support.
Yeah, for sure. So what was like the inspiration behind this story in particular? Was it a heavy metal album that made you think of this, or because it kind of gives off Tenacious D and Pick a Destiny vibes a little bit with the magic drumsticks.
Definitely, you can't deny that. Or people have told me, oh, it's like Metalocalypse. It's like, yeah, can't
Yeah,
deny it.
yeah.
I love all those things. It's not as over the top as Metalocalypse, but some of the themes in like Pick of Destiny, like of course, in the heavy metal community, we all agree that Ronnie James Dio is God, amongst a few others that are godly, like Lemmy and Ozzy and everybody. But really, the story was it started much smaller. My stories usually start very small, and it was really at the time I didn't think of the character as a woman or a man. I just thought, somebody is kind of transitioning out of being a band, like I said, like I was. And maybe they get to a point like I did. I never had huge aspirations of, playing Madison Square Garden or something like that. But certainly, when you're in a band, you have, these visions of doing more with music and fans and all that stuff. But you get to a certain point and that hasn't happened. How do you cope with that? So the story was really like, how do I tell my sad sack story of being a failed musician and make people read it? And I was like, well, we got to have werewolves. We got to have some sort of something exciting to get them into the story. So I kind of came to it backwards, and I was like, well, this young person is going to their band practice, and a werewolf busts through the wall, and you saw that in the art here. And then I was like, well, wait a minute, how did the werewolf get there? And then we had to kind of reverse engineer from there. It wasn't until later that I came, to the conclusion that, of course, that would happen because it's an alternate timeline where Black Sabbath is the most popular band. So, things like alchemy,
are real.
Yeah, alchemy, hybrid creatures, witchcraft, all that stuff is happening, just like your aunts and uncles and grandparents told you would happen with heavy metal. Well, guess what? It actually did happen. So that's how I kind of came to it. And then I was like, well, again, sure, that's fun, but if it's a longer story, how are you going to keep people involved? And again, it just made sense because I kind of came to a point too as I got older where I didn't listen to as much heavy metal. And I have very welcoming friends. My brother is older than me. He was a huge musical influence. They've never judged me, but you still have that feeling like, oh, are people going to judge me? I'm listening to more like pop music and like, rock. Am I a metalhead? Am I a true? And I kind of that notion made me laugh.
Oh
like,
yeah, a similar thing happened to me because nowadays I'm listening to like a lot of alternative rock and like just random stuff.
And I was listening to a lot of female-led bands. Like the first one that comes to mind at that time is St. Vincent, the amazing musician. She had done a team up with David Byrne, and it was just an amazing album. And I kind of started to explore more female musicians, and that just made sense. All of a sudden, it clicked in me. The main character should be female because I'm kind of being more influenced by female music, female-fronted bands. And we know also in the heavy metal world, there can be, some gatekeepers for a lot of different reasons. Again, are you metal enough? Are you man enough? Can you name 3 songs? Why
That
are you
can be
wearing that
horrible in that scene and the comic book scene. There's gatekeepers everywhere, unfortunately.
So there is a subtext to this, which is not very subtle, but that does happen in our. That's not to say again that I don't love comics and heavy metal, but when you love something very much and you invest a lot of time in it, you also see the warts that come with it too. So this series is much about that. Again, not to say that that's personally happened to me, but I've definitely seen it happen to others where, they're questioning their metalness and you're not metal enough. And it's like, man, can't we just like enjoy what we enjoy and not have to prove our metalness to everybody? So again, the world is very much about proving how metal you are,
Well, and even, her buddy who's helping her out with her like indie stuff, he even says, he's like, you need to be more metal. Like,
yeah. So that's a lot of and it's a lot of inside humor, again, if you're into heavy metal or whatever, music in general, and there's a lot of inside jokes and stuff like that. So I hope that people enjoy it. Again, it's a 3-arc story. So we're only in the middle here. You can get the first trade paperback through the campaign as well. If you're a trade paperback waiter like I am, we respect that. So you can get that as well. Even if you're not ready to get the new issue, you can get that. And yeah.
So go ahead and scan that QR code for our guest John here and get your copies reserved. I believe the ZOOP, it's on ZOOP, right?
It is on ZOOP, which people have reached out to me quite often. Why are you doing ZOOP? You've been successful on Kickstarter. I actually approached ZOOP about relaunching the trade paperback to start like a relationship with them, and they were like, well, you already had some success with that with Kickstarter. We don't usually relaunch, but we love the project. We're 100% comics. We'd like you to come over. We'll promote the book. So that was kind of a nice feeling. Like, they're not my publisher, but they're behind the project, and they're what we
Right.
can mutually do, which on Kickstarter is great. We've had tons of success. I love Kickstarter. I've done.
I mean, Kickstarter's gotten a lot of amazing books made.
Yeah, and for myself too, I think I've had 14 of my 16 campaigns on there have been successful, and I've launched dozens of books. I love them, but at some point, you need to diversify, right? So I was just excited by how excited they were, and they were like, "We want the next issue," and I was like, "Okay, let's give it a shot. It's different." I understand people are, they click on the link and they're like, "Oh, it's something different. It looks different," but give it a shot. I like how they lay the page out. It's really like an a la carte web store. Like, I want this button and this cover and this. You don't have to do like the weird tiers that they do on Kickstarter. If you want 2 of something, you can just click it. You don't, again, have to make some weird bundle package on Kickstarter. So I really like what the site has to offer. And we're one of only 5 projects on there right now. So they really focus on, promoting you. On Kickstarter, I think there's 250 right now. So
yeah, I mean, Kickstarter, you got to do some really flashy artwork on the banner or something to make yourself stand out, because the amount of not safe for work content that floods Kickstarter is insane.
Yeah, it's a lot. And again, even after years and years of success, we still, we have trouble these days banging the drum on Kickstarter and getting people to click those links and follow and back. So, again, just wanting to try something different. It's a comic centric site. We're on there with amazing creators like Tim Seeley right now has a project on there, and it's just, again, cool to be kind of featured, so to speak, on a comic centric site like that.
I was just say, one of our former guests, TS Comics, I believe he's on ZOOP a lot as well. I believe he launched his book Tokyo Fire over there on ZOOP.
Nice, yeah. And I don't. If it's a cool comic, my credit card information is all over the internet anyway, so I'm going to back it. I'm not worried about that. So I backed Zoop, crowdfunder, Indiegogo a few times, Kickstarter, wherever you launch your book. Just know that if it's a cool project, I'm definitely not going to discriminate. But I get it. Again, people, it's something different, it's something new. So, but Zoop is just the same as Kickstarter as far as fulfillment. And if anything, Zoop holds you a little bit more accountable than Kickstarter to get your project out, because they don't want to see, one of their few projects not reach fulfillment.
Right, for sure. And Michael Balonis down here commenting Tokyo Fire was so good. Michael was also a former guest, so everybody go check his episode out. You can find a playlist, I believe, down in the description below. If not, you'll find it on my page.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so
I forgot the last book I got on. I think it was called 33.
Okay. What was that about?
It was a I don't want to say a heist, but a crime book. It was a crime book.
Okay.
Yeah, I got there a couple of years ago. I backed a couple of good ones on there.
Oh yeah, you can always find something good on there if you dig deep. Oh, excuse me. So, what are kind of your future plans for this? I know you said it's kind of a 3-part thing, or is there going to be maybe an extra second 3-part? Are we going to do like the 3 different trilogies like Star Wars, or is this just the one trilogy and done?
I mean, I definitely have an idea where we're headed. That can change along the way. I enjoy that. Another aspect of comics that I enjoy is that, you can alter course in the middle, as long as you didn't, pin yourself too deep into a hole. If you leave it kind of vague, you can kind of leave it open and go different places. I've even changed scripts as they're going out the door, changed dialogue, that I was like, oh, this would be much better. That's part of why I letter my own stuff, is that I can kind of make those changes on the page. So I kind of embrace
you're
that.
kind of the last little hand to touch it, right? Yep. Before you actually send it off to print and all that.
I can only blame myself when the mistakes get through too. But,
right.
But like Dan's turned in pages and you're just like, that character is so freaking good. He's in the story now. And then you go to the next script and you're like, that guy's got a bigger part because he's amazing. That happens all the time with art, because I've been very blessed with the artists that I work with. And Dan is no different. He says, oh, you put me down as like, the co-creator in the story, but I don't write the story. I'm like, you write the story, because when you turn in that page, there's characters that would never pass that.
I was going to say, because his artwork is influencing how you're writing the story.
including we got such an amazing response to. We were kind of like on to issue 3. They were supposed to be three issue arcs, about 9 issues, and we had to extend the first one an issue because I asked my daughter, actually, who was 8 at the time. I said, we need like a sidekick for this book. We need like a hybrid creature. What would a alligator and a spider look like crossed over? And she drew me this picture where and we called it the Arachnigator, and I was like, oh, I'm putting that in the book. So she turned this into me.
Oh, nice.
And, this cute little drawing, and then when you get the book or go to the page, you'll see Dan's amazing art. He's gotten such a good response that we're actually making a stuffed animal.
Oh, you're gonna make a plushies? Oh, dude, you're gonna kill at conventions with kids.
Oh, I'm sure. And part of that was it had to make sense for the book. Obviously we all sell out eventually, but I try not to.
I mean, I don't know what's more heavy metal than an Arachnigator,
right? Well, and it was just so organically how that worked. It was like she was having fun. I was like, ooh, let's add it to the book. And then Dan was so excited to draw it. And of course, again, he turns in these amazing pages of it. And then so now Argyle is his name. He has a much bigger role in the book too. So again, I tell Dan, like, if you hadn't turned in this, and if I had known Dan drew the most amazing alligators in the world, I would have added it from page 1. But again, just kind of embracing that and saying, okay, we've got some space here in issue 3. Let's add a new character. Let's do something fun. And, it's worked out, and people just love the character and love the design. And again, my daughter was involved, so that's really cool. So,
yeah, whenever you can get the whole family involved in something like that, that's always a cool thing.
Yeah, she did a little commercial for the Arachnigator when we got him in the mail, and she's just it's super fun to be involved with her that way.
That's awesome, man. You stick her out front of the convention table, man. I'm telling you, it's hard to say no to a little kid. Like,
she's offered to do sketches and stuff and have fun. She's a great kid, and she's very into art and stuff. I don't like I don't like force her to read what I read or anything, but she kind of comes around naturally. And she started, of course, with like Dog Man and stuff like that. And now she's getting into some other books, My Little Pony, and it's cool.
Hey, a lot of people my age started with Captain Underpants in elementary school. So
there you go.
Dog Man's the same creative team, right? So
no, that's not the same.
Is it not?
Dave Pilkey's not Captain Underpants. Is he? Maybe he is.
I don't know. I know it's very similar artwork.
Yeah, you're probably right.
I don't know. I'm sure somebody in the comment section will correct me very quickly if I'm wrong. Social media is very good at that.
No, you're right. I totally forgot that.
Oh, cool. I was actually right about it.
He's had tons of I didn't even realize. He's an amazing success story in comics.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
There we go. We've got double confirmation from Balonis.
Thanks. Yeah, but it's just cool to have her involved in it now too, and the whole family's getting excited about it. And again, that's on ZOOP as well.
Yeah, and you got some pretty cool bundles for people to get. You got some options on there.
Yeah, again, ZOOP is a little different. It's kind of, you can pick whatever you want, but we did, of course, want to give people some deals if they bundle stuff together. So you'll save on shipping if you click the bundles. You can get all the covers. I do the all black sketch covers. I design those. So with each issue 1 of the series, there'll be an all black sketch cover, which, of course, is super metal, but you can also get people to draw on it in white ink if you want. So we encourage people to pick those up. We have an outstanding variant cover from Dave Chisholm, who does, he did Miles Davis's autobiography through Z2. And he did another one called Chasing the Bird through Z2 Comics. He's an amazing trumpet player and artist. So we like to get people, who are also involved in music.
It's amazing how random some people's talents are, isn't it? Like, everybody has just a couple things where it's just like, I wouldn't expect that one. Like,
well, and that's part of the reason I work with people like Dave and Dan. I admire them, but I also secretly hate them because they're so talented and they're better looking than you. And it's like, dude, this is not fair. But yeah, Dave is the same way. Dave's actually a doctorate level trumpet player.
Wow.
Who happens to be an amazing world-class illustrator and storyteller. And I just emailed him and I'm like, Dave, you're amazing. You're into music. Would you want to draw a cover for this? And he's like, of course I want to draw a cover for this. And that was just, if that's one of the highlights of the series when we get to the end, then that's enough for me. I don't delude myself into thinking I'm going to win Eisner's or sell 1 million copies. To me, it's like, you got to slow down and enjoy the moments. You know, who did a cool cover? You know, what did you and Dan laugh about after the book came out? Oh, you know, thinking about my daughter and making this stuff, you know, it's about the journey along the way. And I think sometimes in comics, we forget that. We get so focused on, I didn't reach my Kickstarter goal, or I didn't increase my backers this time, which I get it. We need the money to keep the things going. Dan's a full-time artist. I pay him his page rate. I'm, you know, I'm not delusional to think we don't need the money.
Right.
It's part of the game. But if that's all you focus on is saying, why don't I have as many readers as so-and-so, or why am I not selling 1,000 copies?
That's
You're
energy
going to miss a lot of
focused
the fun.
better at other places.
And you're gonna miss a lot of the fun. You're gonna spend your time being, you know, miserable. You got to be smart about it though, right? Yeah, I always tell people, although I know a few who've done it, don't launch your 100-issue series, you know, with the first project you do. You're going to leave yourself disappointed that you don't get to the end. Do something more manageable, see it all the way through, and then, you know,
Maybe
see
start
what's
with a
next.
one shot and see what happens with it.
Yeah. Or
You know how
do a
many one
5-issue
shots I
arc.
buy at conventions? It's insane.
I
Like,
love them. I love a good one shot. Come on.
I was say, especially if it's introducing like a bigger world later on.
Yeah,
Shoot,
and that's
give
the
it
other
to
thing
me.
you can do, right? Give it a soft ending to that arc, but then leave it open if you get time to come back or something happens in the future, you know.
Right, like our first guest, good friend of ours, actual he's co-hosted the show a couple of times, Kyle Goodman, shout out Nerd Tween. He he started off he's got a huge series he's doing, but he started it off with an 8-page ash can and threw that on Kickstarter. Like, I mean,
There you
you
go.
don't have to, you know, try to shoot for the fences right off the rip. Like,
Yep. Yep. That is very true. And Mike has a good comment in the comments there. He's changed the dialogue. I do that all the time. Like you said, if the dialogue, if the art tells the story, I don't need to say anything. Get out of the way, and that happens all the time. So again, I really I don't get involved in the, you know, the comic drama online. You know, art is more important than writers. It's silly to argue with people online. But any writer who tells you that the artist is not the full co-creator is full of it. I don't care if you write an encyclopedia for every panel of the page. There is influence that the artist has that you can't do, or you would be drawing it yourself. That
100%.
it just cannot be replaced. And again, it's part of the organic process of making the page. As pages come in, your feelings about characters, your story changes, your dialogue changes, like he said. There's a lot, and that's why I always put anybody, you know, if you're the main artist on the book, you're definitely the co-creator of all these projects.
No, 100%, because I mean, it's literally half the book. If there's no artwork, you're just writing a mini novel.
That's the thing too. If you want to be the sole creator, write your novel.
Right. So, what else do you guys got coming down the pipeline from your publishing house?
Well, we have this year we have 5 books coming out. You've seen Drumsticks of Doom trade paperback. That already came out in January. Great success. That's already been shipped out. Then we did Child Possession Services, the 3rd issue in that series, wrapped up in March. We should be going to print any day now with that, as I finish letters on that. Drumsticks of Doom is the 3rd step in this year. And then we have 2 other projects coming out. We have LCS, which is basically the short pitches comic collecting after the apocalypse.
Okay.
And we have Final Heist, which is there's a heist set up at the oldest bank in the world, but inside the vaults lies more than old money. So we have 2 other LCS is a 2-issue series. Final Heist is a 1-shot this year, and then right after that, in early 2025, we'll have the next issue of Drumsticks of Doom, and then the 3rd issue of that series to follow. So we've got a lot. We went all in this year, and we got a lot hanging on these. Each Kickstarter or each crowdfunder is as important as the next. So if we can get through this one, we're on to LCS. If LCS funds, then we're on to Final Heist, and the ball keeps rolling. You know, we keep throwing all our money in the ring. If we don't crap out, we go to the next one.
Hey, that's the game though, right? If you guys want to check out everything that he's got going on, go check out Jon Westhoff's website over at, I forget the name of it already.
Our web store is Store Envy, and it's Part-Time Comics with an X, like you see below my name here.
If you scan the QR code on the screen right there, you will go straight to the homepage.
Thank you. And we usually just send out our link tree, which again is linktree/part-time comics with an X, no spaces, dashes, or underlines. And that's us on all social media as well too. If you Google it, all of our stuff comes up because of that part-time with the comics with the X. But yeah, we have all the links on our link tree because again, we know we have a lot going on, so sometimes it's hard. Just go to the link tree. All of our recent crowdfunders, any news and information, our YouTube is there, all our social media, all that stuff. And however you want to engage with us, all of the links are there.
And if you scan this new QR code that just popped up on the screen, you go directly to the ZOOP page and you can help crowdfund Drumsticks of Doom.
And yes, we would really appreciate it. And we also understand, we're not blind to the issues that are going around the world. We understand money's tight for a lot of people. A share really helps these small projects. Social media just squeezes everything right now, and that's our biggest way to get these projects out. So even if you think you only have 2 followers, it all helps. So any share on any preferred social media really, really does help, and we really appreciate it.
So hit the like button, hit the share button, get this video out to more people so more people can check out Drumsticks of Doom. Because that's what we're trying to do here at the Indie Inkwell is get more eyes on these independent comic books. It was the whole reason we started this show. So if you're not doing that, I don't know what you're doing here. But anyway, if you want to help us support the independent comic book community, you can go check out our merch store, scan that QR code right there. There's going to be links down in the description for all of this in case you guys missed the QR codes on the screen. So don't worry about that. Same thing for anybody listening on Spotify when this airs tomorrow. You will find links down in the description for everything. And if you really want to be super awesome, let me be a tad bit selfish here because it is my birthday. You can go and hit the like and subscribe button here, and you can go and hit the like and subscribe buttons over on my other YouTube channel that just started, JJ's Fishing Stuff. If you like bass fishing or fishing content, you can find it there. I won't bore you guys with it here because I know you guys came for comic books, but that, just throwing that out there.
I like it.
But anyway, is there anything else you want to plug or promote before I let you go and enjoy the rest of your evening, man?
No, I appreciate you having me on your birthday. I'd like to let you go and so.
Oh no, it's fine, man. I signed up for this gig. I'm ready.
But you've certainly promoted all of our many projects very thoroughly so far. So again, if anybody's interested, I'm Part-Time Comics with an X on all social medias. You can find me, and I'm always happy to. Don't feel like you can't reach out because we don't know each other. If you have a question about comic making and crowdfunding, people helped me so much in the last 15 years. One of my favorite things to do is to help other people who are, kind of starting on their journey, and even just small questions can help when you feel like you're kind of alone out there creating on your own. So don't feel bad if you ever have questions.
100%. And that goes for us here at the Indie Inkwell as well. There are emails and links and all over the place on this page. So if you guys have any comic questions, or if you're a creator and you want to get on the show, shoot us an email. It's not that hard. Sometimes it takes us a while to respond and get the ball rolling, but we will get you on as soon as we can. But with all of that said, Jon, thanks for coming on and talking for a while with me. If I always say, if we don't have a guest, we don't have a show. So we always appreciate anybody who's coming on.
We appreciate you helping get the word out. We'll do the same to share the episode when it's on Spotify tomorrow.
Awesome. And everybody out there, please, as always, be safe, be kind, and we will see you guys right here next week. Take it easy.